Alrighty, so this presentation is about due regard. So let's just dive right into things. First off, what is due regard? Due regard is driving with the safety of others in mind, whether they are walking, riding a bike, or driving a car. You, as the driver, are in control of the ambulance, and you are responsible for getting the ambulance and everyone in it from point A to point B safely. And that may be from the scene to a hospital or from hospital to hospital. Secondly, other people may have the right of way, like buses, for example. If they have their lights on and the stop sign is out, you are not allowed, under any circumstances, to just ignore those signs and blow right past. Thirdly, when it comes down to it, it's always best to just play it safe. Nobody's going to yell at you because you got to the hospital safely, but if you get into a crash, that's a different story. Lights and sirens. So the purpose of lights and sirens, first and foremost, is to request permission for the right-of-way. Running lights and sirens does not automatically mean everyone else will stop or move out of the way for you. Some people won't see you coming, or they have their radio up so loud that they can't even hear you coming. Like I mentioned before, lights and sirens are only a warning to others, and they're not always recognized by other people. When you come up to an intersection, just slow down, make eye contact with every single driver, and then clear the intersection before you proceed through. Running emerging to the scene could save time. In the city, though, and I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself talking about drawbacks here, but there's more of a risk of causing a crash when you use lights and sirens in the city, and you might only be saving 10, 20, or 30 seconds. Now, the drawbacks, first one is other drivers. Other drivers can freak out when they see you coming in their rearview mirror, and the saying everyone uses when they see emergency vehicles coming is slow down and move to the right. And I can attest to the fact that not everyone does that. On a two-lane road, some drivers may move to the left and force you to go between traffic, and if you're picking up speed and going through that, there's a higher potential for a crash. When you come to an intersection with a stop and go light, it may be better to just turn off your lights and siren to let traffic flow normally, than to force the cars in front of you to pull into the intersection. And then after you get through the green light and pass through the intersection, you can flip the lights back on and proceed to your destination. You will never ever know what somebody else will do, so just slow down and make sure everyone knows that you are there. Running your lights and sirens also gives you an unneeded adrenaline rush. That adrenaline rush can cause you to drive faster than you normally would and make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. And then lastly, the third drawback is that there's a higher risk and potential for you to get into a crash. You should not do while driving the ambulance. Don't think that you are suddenly a NASCAR driver when you get into the driver's seat. The ambulance is a big box and it's very top heavy, and driving recklessly can cause rollover. Uh, don't blow through stoplights and stop signs. Like I talked about in the last slide, other people are unpredictable. Do not disregard the regular flow of traffic. And that means don't be driving in the oncoming lanes, don't go the wrong way down a one-way, and don't just ignore signs and stoplights because you think you can or you have the right to. Fourthly, when you are at the wheel, you are responsible for keeping the ambulance on the road and in your lane. Don't be paying less attention to the road and everyone else around you because you have to call a hospital or check emails or whatever else. Your sole focus when you're the driver in the driver's seat is to safely get the ambulance to your destination. Your partner in the back can call a hospital and do whatever else. Lastly, do not exceed safe driving speed for the current road conditions. Just because the speed limit sign says 55 miles an hour does not mean you should be driving 55 miles an hour on glare ice when it's dark and foggy out. It's better to make it to your destination than to end up in a ditch in the middle of nowhere in a snowstorm with a patient that needs immediate medical attention. So there are plenty of case studies and stories out there about ambulance crashes, but this one specifically, two EMTs were both at fault for the injuries a woman sustained during a crash. The first fault was that the patient was not secured completely to the stretcher, and on top of that, the stretcher wasn't properly locked to the ambulance. The EMT driver was driving recklessly and hit a car when passing through an intersection. And the crash caused further injuries to the already frail and ill 90-year-old woman, and that delayed transport to the hospital. The woman was suffering from a stroke prior to the crash, and delay from the crash led to a temporary paralysis on her left side. The EMTs, because of this, had extensive consequences for their actions and lack of actions, and they were taken to trial, and the patient and Medicare both won in settlement. The EMTs were at fault, and also the employers could have been at fault if they did not train the EMTs properly. So this study goes to show that driving safely is better than losing your job or life because of an accident. So always drive with due regard when operating an ambulance.